Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Vijana Vallabha Girivarada Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivarada Yasodhanandana Raja Janaranjana Yasodhanandana Raja Janaranjana Tira Panacha Jamuna Tira Panacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Madhava Kunja Vihari Vijana Vallabha Girivarada Vijana Vallabha Girivarada Sudhanandana Raja Janaranjana Sudhanandana Raja Janaranjana Panacha Tira Panacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Good morning, devotees. We are going to read from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Famous verse, famous among brahmacharis, especially, and sannyasis, is 558. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nasta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So the verse goes as follows. Thank you, Taraka Prabhu, for hosting it, as always. Getting there. Pumsa striya mituni babhametam tayor mituridaya grantimahu ato griha kshetra sutapta vitar janasya mohoya mameti. I haven't memorized too many verses, but this one I knew from my brahmachari times. Pumsa, of a male, striya, of a female, mituni bhavam, attraction for sexual life, etam, this, tayo, of both of them, mita, between one another, hridaya grantim, the knot of the hearts, ahu, they call, ata, thereafter, griha, by home, kshetra, field, sutta, children, apta, relatives, vitai, and by wealth, janasya, of the living being, moha, illusion, I am this, aham, I, mama, mine, iti, thus. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of a male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Purport. Sex, well, you know, it's going to be heavy if the first word on the purport is sex. So here we go. Sex serves as the natural attraction between man and woman. And when they are married, the relationship becomes more involved. Due to the entangling relationship between man and woman, there is a sense of illusion whereby one thinks, this man is my husband, or this woman is my wife. This is called hridaya granti, the heart knot in the heart. This knot is very difficult to undo, even though a man and woman separate each for the principles of varnashram or simply to get a divorce. In any case, the man always thinks of the woman and the woman always thinks of the man. Thus, a person becomes materially attached to family, property, and children, although all of these are temporary. The possessor unfortunately identifies with his property and wealth. Sometimes, even after renunciation, one becomes attached to a temple or to a few things that constitute the property of a sannyasi. But such attachment is not as strong as family attachment. Attachment to the family is the strongest illusion. In the Satya Samhita, it is stated, Ramadhya Jagabhakadya Muchante Sahayina Podyante Kechanai Tesham Vishesham Chavido Vidu. Sometimes it is found among exalted personalities like Lord Brahma that the wife and children are not a cause of bondage. On the contrary, the wife actually helps further spiritual life and liberation. Nonetheless, most people are bound by the knots of a marital relationship, and consequently, they forget their relationship with Krishna. The verse again. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of a male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyanan Janan Sarakaya Chaksur Umilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Kam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Paramananda Maravam Shri Chaitanyam Ishwaram. Vanchakalpaturvyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanavyo Vaishnavavyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna devotees. So here we go, back to the knot of material existence, which seems to be based on sex. Even Adam Smith is a Scottish economist from the 1700s who said that the family is the impetus for anything, basically, wealth or motivation. So here we have the added problem of Hridaya Granthi, which is the knot in the heart. This is a very often quoted verse. I mean, maybe not so much anymore, but in the 80s, it was like you heard a verse more than you heard Sarva Dharma Parityaja, practically speaking. But this is not, it's the combination. As Prabhupada said, men are good, women are good. The combination is kind of sketchy, as this sexual attraction makes one forget about Krishna, which is the goal of life, is to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So anything that is detracting us from remembering Krishna is a problem. There is ample quotations, even in the Bhagavad Gita, verse 39 of the 3rd chapter, that you probably, I hear Yasudev quoting somewhat frequently. Abritam Jnanamatena Gerino Nitya Vairina Karma Rupena Kantaya Duspurena Nalena Cha. Thus the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. I'll read the purport, it's very short. It is said in the Manusmriti that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex, and thus this material world is called Maitunya Agara, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, this is quite interesting, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of a living entity. Therefore, this lust is a symbol of ignorance by which a living entity is kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. And this is because one will be bound to the material world. So no matter how many facilities or how much happiness you get in prison, the point is to get out, not to stay in prison. No matter if you, due to your good behavior, you get a window that faces the patio, and you get your own cell, and you get a black and white TV, and you get a vase with a flower in it, and you get books. You're in prison. In prison means you can't move. So we are all guests of Durga. Durga means can't move. So we can't get out of the material world. Yeah, you can do a lot of upward or downward mobility, but you can't get out. And sex is the actual reason why people want to stay, because there is a little bit of pleasure. Prabhupada gave a lecture in Vrindavan in October of 1976 on the same verse that we are hearing today. I took a few notes. There's quite a few pearls of wisdom. Prabhupada says, nobody wants to be predominated. Everyone wants to be predominator. This is the illusion. And he adds, so Krishna consciousness movement means to learn how to be predominated, not to become predominator. Just the opposite. And Krishna comes personally and he says that I am the predominator. And the verse I somewhat quoted, Sarvadharman Paritaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja, 1866. I am predominator. Why are you trying to be predominator? That is not possible. So as soon as artificially we want to be the predominator immediately, the Maya is there, not our Maya, the Maya illusion. First of all, education is don't unite, remain brahmachari. But if you're not able, all right, take a wife like a gentleman and live like a gentleman. Ekonari brahmachari, that is also, if one is satisfied with one woman, then he is also brahmachari. That's interesting. It's not vyabhichari. So that is regulated, that you must have wife, not must have, but if you cannot avoid, take one wife and remain as a grihasta. There's so many rules and regulations. Grihasta means one who follows the rules and regulations of sex life. Grihamedi means he does not know the rules and regulations. He thinks that this family, this husband and wife, children and home, that is everything. That is called Grihamedi. But Grihasta means he is as good as a sannyasi. Either it is Grihasta ashram or sannyasa ashram, same thing. Ashram means very easily understood in India. There is discussion, the place where the spiritual culture is cultivated. That is called ashram. What is the difference between the ashram and the ordinary home? Ordinary home means without any regulative principles, and ashram means real purpose is self-realization, development of Krishna consciousness. But if one is unable to accept sannyasa ashram or brahmachari ashram, that is grihastha ashram, not animal ashram. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, therefore, he has said, if we are eager for advancement in Krishna consciousness, then we can stay in any ashram. It doesn't matter, either Grihastha ashram or Sannyasa ashram, it doesn't matter. Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says to Ramananda, Kiva Vipra, Kiva Shudra, Nyase Kenenoy, Ye Krishna Tattvaveta, say Guru Hoy. Prabhupada kind of mix, put the words in different order. That's from Maya Lila 8:128. Say Guru. Who can become Guru? Generally a Brahman, a sannyasi, that is, they are forced. Brahmana is the Guru of other Varnas. And sannyasi is the Guru for all Varnashram. This is. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that is social system. If there is a Brahman, if there is a sannyasi, one should give preference to him to accept Guru. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that is not the criterion. One must be well expert, experienced, well aware of the science of Krishna. He shall be Guru. Not that particularly because one is born in a Brahman family or one has taken sannyas. So these regulative principles are there. So what is the big plan behind these regulative principles? The big plan is, here is the attraction, pumsastriya mituni babam, to cut down this attraction between male and female. This is the big plan. Otherwise, there is no need of a varnashram. Varnashram means to train the candidates gradually to become free from disentanglement of man and woman. This is the basic principle. Yoga system is also the same thing. Yani also, karma also. So this is the training of Bhagavad Gita. This is the training of Bhagavat. Everywhere, the Vedic principle, the first principle, is that we have forgotten Krishna. There is also a quote from a talk that Prabhupada gave at the Kumbh Mela in Allahabad in January of 1977, where he says, the last resort of sense enjoyment is sex life. So if we indulge in sex life, then Yoshitam Sangi Sangam, not only directly we indulge in sex life, but even indirectly we associate with persons who are only interested in sex life. The whole world is interested in sex life. Pumsa striya mituni bhavam eta. That's from today's verse. This material world is existing on this mituni bhava. So tamodvaram yoshitam sangi sangam. Therefore, you'll find in the Vedic way of life, sex indulgence is restricted. If we indulge in sex life more than it is absolutely required, then we are gliding towards hellish condition of life. And if we follow the path of the Mahatmas, Mahat Seva, that is Varam Ahur Vimukte, we are making progress toward liberation. Literally, the gates of liberation open. So this is a chance, and Prabhupada refers to the event that was taking place there. This Kumbh Mela is a chance to get opportunity of Mahat Seva Dvaram Ahur Vimukte. Many, of course, it is Kali Yuga. There are so many so-called Mahatmas interested for earning livelihood. That kind of Mahatma is not required. And those who are serving Maya in the name of Krishna, they're called Mayavadi. Siddhanta Boliya Chitana Kara Alasa. Don't be lazy to discuss about Siddhanta. Iha Naitit Krishna Lage Sudhrida Manasa. The more you discuss the the factual presentation of Vishnu Tattva, Maya, and Jiva Tattva, Shakti Tattva, then it will be clear what is Krishna. Krishna is the origin of everything. Aham Sarvasya Prabhu Mata Saram Pravarte. Prabhupada goes on, and he actually criticized very heavily some of the people that are at the Kumbh Mela. He said they are bona fide yogis and sannyasis and so on, but there's a lot of bogus people. And then I also found that there is a discussion where Prabhupada was working with Hayagriva and Shyamasundar on the Dialectical Spiritualism book, which is actually, there is no fault in Prabhupada, but there is a bit of misrepresentation from both Hayagriva and Shamasundar, who read kind of the cliff notes on different philosophers and presented sometimes straw men, which in philosophy, straw man argument means you are actually defeating someone who is not real, like because they presented a philosophy and arguments and points that the philosophers themselves did not espouse, did not talk about. So anyway, but whatever Prabhupada said, it was perfect answer to all the points that they were presenting, but sometimes they were misrepresenting the philosopher. So when Prabhupada was speaking about on the discussion about Socrates, he said simply by following the regulative principle, if he does not reach the ultimate goal of spiritual life, so that is also not wanted. So this is called Niyamagraha. You just follow the principles because they are there. The real aim is to come to the spiritual platform and become free from the influence of these laws of material nature. So passion can be, it could be a synonym for sex. Passion is the binding force in the material nature. Just like in the prison house, the prisoners are kept sometimes chained by some iron shackles, another method. So material nature has given the chain shackles of sex life, passion, rajas, tama, kamayesa, krodesha, rajaguna, samudbhava. Rajaguna means the modes of passion. So modes of passion means kama, lusty desires, and kroda. When the lusty desires are not fulfilled, one becomes angry. But these things are the means of bondage in this material world. So there is much to be discussed, but it is a fact that we, at least in the past, and some anachronistic devotees, anachronistic means that they are not in the proper time, that they are kind of out of sync with the different progress. And there is progress. Like Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada presented in Jhansi with the League of Devotees, the way he presented it in the Bowery, and the way he presented it in San Francisco a couple of years later, and the way he presented it in 1975 or 76 or 77 is different. The strategy changed for the benefit of those who wanted to take up Krishna consciousness, but were dismayed by the restrictions, by the because Prabhupada never compromised on the philosophy, on the tattva, on the siddhanta, never, not for a moment. But on the basic principles, yeah, that's always the same. However, he adjusted according to time and circumstance. That sometimes we forget to do. We just take statements out of context and present things that in other times were valid, and they're no longer valid. Prabhupada adapted the inclusion of women as pujaris, as brahmins, living in a temple. These things that were not even dreamed of in Indian ashrams. Nobody would dream of things like that. And now there is a discussion. I mean, the discussion continues, although it should be over, frankly, about females giving diksha. So we give them the chance to worship the deities and to give classes, but we don't want to certify them. In other words, you go to school for a number of years and you do very well, but we won't give you a diploma because you're in a particular type of body. This is actually in my understanding is a serious mistake. We even have Janava Devi, Lord Nityananda's wife, being the guru of all Vaishnavas. If anybody reads the pastime that happened at Katuri Gram with Narottam Das Thakur's famous kirtan, where they install 5 sets of deities, and that Lord Chaitanya, the Panchatattva, who had already left the earth, showed up, became visible to practically everyone. Who was the guest of honor? Who was the most important person at that festival? It was Janava Devi. It was a woman. So we cannot say woman is the cause of fall down, sex desire, which means women. Not at all. Not at all. It's the common attraction. And there are many subtleties involved. But this is the not women, but the desire to enjoy without Krishna. The fact that we do forget Krishna, that is the crux of why we are in the material world and why we will like to remain in the material world. So again, Maitunya Agara, the shackles of sex life. It doesn't mean women. It means the desire to enjoy separately from Krishna through lust. And lust doesn't come alone. Kama-esha, Krodha-esha. So there is anger to follow that. So nobody likes to be angry. Once I was invited to a mansion in California to visit. There was a program by these followers of, I may have told this before, for these followers of Neem Karoli Baba, who was very popular, love God, love everybody, feed everybody, that kind of his philosophy. So we went to this huge mansion where the owners, kind of young man and woman, they were very open. They let people stay there. I would become so angry if I had a mansion full of strangers that took advantage of my openness and generosity. But the owner, he was so nice to everyone, and he was genuinely, openly welcoming of everybody. And I asked him, I said, you're a better person than I am. I couldn't do what you do. And he said, I just don't like the person I become when I'm not like this. So we have to learn to become the person that we need to be instead of the person that we think we are. Like when we become angry and we become lusty, we'll become angry and we revel. We actually enjoy being like that. Yes, I am. Or when we become depressed and we actually derive some sort of sense gratification, when we become anything but pure spiritual souls, lovers of Krishna, we kind of derive a certain type of pleasure. It's a perverted pleasure. Pleasure should be there because we are loving entities, blissful entities. That's what we are eternally. But we become something else, and we become identified with and attached to it. And sex life is the gold medal of sense gratification. And then it becomes extended. It becomes family. Like my family is more important than anybody else. So this is a serious problem with misidentification. It's very difficult. Like if you ask people, so what's your goal in life? What's your greatest pleasure in life? They will say, oh, my family is the most important thing. I'm not saying just a few, pretty much everybody. But animals are like that too. the bear, mama bear, and the lioness, they defend their cubs from imaginary attack. They're so absorbed. Of course, they're animals, so they have a different set of moral and ethics. Like the lions, the male lions are known to just eat some of their cubs, and the lioness is fierce in defending them, and the bear is also like that. But if this I heard from good sources, if the male bear attacks one of the cubs, still the female is defending, but the cub is killed. So but the male bear goes away. The mother will eat the dead cub. So we don't have this. Well, I say temporarily we don't have this, because it appears to be that even within one's family, humans are losing complete control of their senses, and mothers kill their children nowadays. Not just with abortion, is when their children are grown up, they just kill them. So this world is a crazy place, and we should not associate with sociopaths and psychopaths and sex mongers. There's a lot of people we should not associate with, but due to the urgency of the message of Lord Chaitanya, sometimes we have to make exceptions and associate with everyone. But this association should be only in terms of I'm delivering a message. So you are, it's like during a war, sometimes we may see a truck going in between the armies, but the truck has a red cross painted on it. So both armies know not to shoot that, because it's retrieving the wounded or taking care of the dead, etc., etc. So this is how we should consider ourselves, like the Red Cross for spiritual life. So we can go into a very dangerous situation, but hopefully not be influenced by it, because we are delivering the medicine that everybody needs. So this is the crux of the serious attempts to reside in the material world, is the attraction, the bond between male and female that creates a knot within the heart that is not like the knot in your shoe that somebody gets tangled up and it takes you a little bit to open it. It's more like the Gordian knot that Alexander the Great gave a good example by not trying to bother undoing it. He took his sword and cut it. So it is our duty to get to the end of life, which it will come for everybody, and cut the knot of attraction to the material world, specifically the desire to enjoy the opposite sex or even the same sex, instead of developing our love for Krishna, which is our birthright and our obligation. Okay, I'll stop the sermon right here. Are there any comments or questions or contentions?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hi, Prabhu. Thank you for a nice class. You pretty much covered all the bases. I especially appreciate, of course, hearing from Srila Prabhupada. That's always very nice. Hey, you know that that talk at the Kumbh Mela in '77. I was present for that. A lot of interesting things Srila Prabhupada had to say at the Kumbh Mela. That was a great adventure. Someone should write a book about that. A little bit of context. There was one of Srila Prabhupada's former servants had fallen away and was he had a chronic problem of attachment to women, and so he would kind of bounce in and out of Krishna consciousness, but kept falling into Maya with various women. And so he showed up at the Kumbh Mela, once again trying to rectify himself. And Srila Prabhupada was very kind and merciful, and took him under his wing once again to try to purify him, which was his typical practice. One might think that Srila Prabhupada's immediate entourage consisted of devotees who were particularly advanced and qualified, and that was not always the case. Quite often, the individuals that would become a servant or a secretary or individuals who are having difficulty in their spiritual life, and Srila Prabhupada would take them on board to give them special attention. He would give them a megadose of his association to purify and uplift them. It wasn't always the case, but sometimes that's what was going on. So that particular talk, Srila Prabhupada was evidently moved to say a few words about the problem of sex attraction. I had took a few notes, had a few thoughts. Before I do that, though, I thought I would share something that I thought was interesting from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I think I mentioned before, before class every day, I read through the verse, and I take a look at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary as well, just to sometimes he'll have a different angle on things not mentioned by Srila Prabhupada. Usually Srila Prabhupada's purports cover everything that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has stated in his commentary. But in this case, there are some differences that are interesting, beginning with his translation. In his translation, he says, excuse me, the relationship between a man and a woman is called double bondage. This creates illusion for the jiva in relation to house, property, sons, relatives, and wealth, in which he thinks, I am this is mine. In his commentary, he explains, when one identifies the action of one's senses with oneself, the illusion arising from association with family members is greater than anything else. Two knots are tied between husband and wife. One knot is, this is my wife. On this knot, the second knot is tied. This is my husband. Though the man may desire to give up relationships, the wife will not give him up. This is the depth of the knot. The knot tied between father and son is also implied. If one is not attached to a family, but identifies as one's possessions, one's clothing, share or utensils, the bondage is not so great since there is no mutual bondage. Because of the mutual knots in the hearts, one falls under illusion thinking, I am a householder, this is my house. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti makes the point that the combination of the two knots on the part of the man and woman, when combined, makes an especially tight knot. So evidently there is some dynamic at play there that exacerbates the problem. Srila Prabhupada alludes to this in his purports and discussions on the topic. And you mentioned his, he talks about man and woman saying that individually man is good, woman is good. He discussed this in a lecture in Bombay in 1975. Actually, it was a morning walk in Bombay. He was talking about how the whole purpose of Vedic civilization is how to slacken that knot of attachment in order to make it possible to progress in Krishna consciousness. Says the whole material attraction means a man's attraction for woman and a woman's attraction for a man. But when they are seeking, where is woman? Where is woman? Where is woman? And the woman is seeking, they come here to make this business. And when they're actually attracted or united, then this bondage, material bondage, will become more tight. Therefore, Vedic civilization is how to slacken it. And ultimately, by force, separation, sannyas, that is required. Because unless they are separated, there cannot be any spiritual advancement. That is the whole process. The unity is bondage. I have written a letter that man is good, woman is good, and when they are united, they are bad. And Srila Prabhupada laughed at that point. Says both of them are bad. And the material world is taking, this is the best thing. But actually, that is not the thing. Man is good because he is part and parcel of God. Woman is good because she is part and parcel of God. But when they unite, they become bad. So the combination is problematic. But there is, Srila Prabhupada describes here and there the principle of utilizing essentially a thorn, a sharp object. You have a thorn in your foot or a splinter in your hand. So you use another thorn to extract it, or a similar sharp implement. You use a thorn to extract a thorn. And so in Krishna consciousness, what is the source of bondage, when it is performed according to religious principles, and that's the key element, executed according to religious principles, then it becomes a source of liberation. It can undo that knot, but critical that it be executed according to religious principles. Otherwise, it becomes a source of bondage. So it can cut both ways. It can be good or bad, depending upon how we execute it. But the crux of the problem is that we have this tendency to try to exploit the material nature in one way or another way for sense gratification, either gross or subtle. The opposite of that exploitation is devotion. So either we act with devotion or we act from a desire to exploit. We have that choice. That's our independence. Srila Prabhupada talks about our minute independence because it is minute. We have actually very little independence or freedom, but yeah, and it consists essentially of that. We have the choice to either take shelter of the spiritual nature or the material nature. If we take shelter of the spiritual nature, then we are conducted by love for Krishna. And if we take shelter of the material nature, then we are conducted by the modes of nature, which is all bondage. There is no freedom. We think that we have freedom to act in this way or that way, but every action is dictated by the modes of nature. We are bound hand and foot at every moment. But acts of love are actually freedom. Anyway, what else did I have? I took a few notes with regards to the controversy about female gurus. I don't really follow politics in any sphere. Very much. I don't have time in my life for these things. There's important things for me to concern myself with, especially at this stage of my life. But to the best of my understanding, and I know a lot of the major players in this issue, but to my knowledge, this is primarily an issue in India, where there are serious cultural issues at play. In the Western world, as far as I have seen, there is not very much opposition to female gurus. GBC seems to be okay with it, as far as I have seen, supportive and defensive of the idea. But India, we have a different situation. So because culturally, people in India will not take seriously, they will not take a female guru very seriously.
I disagree. There is a very famous Anandama and the hugging guru.
Yeah. That's another thing. I'm not talking about these. Now we're talking about essentially bogus. There's all kinds of deviant philosophies and
the Indians are very
groups.
The Indians are very eager to accept they don't discriminate. It's just that some people are just culturally biased and chauvinistic, and they have a problem with that. But anyway, this is not a class about gurus. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to finish the class on time, and I wanted to add something, if that's okay with you.
Fire away.
Okay. Perhaps I didn't put enough emphasis in the fact that the combination of male and female in our movement, in our tradition, is actually an incentive to practice Krishna consciousness and enthuse each other in the practice of devotion, the devotional practices. So it is very much welcome. Not that an aspiring or someone who is a brahmachari and is listening to all these instructions and thinking, oh, I should remain brahmachari or should go directly to sannyasa because this entanglement is bad for me. I think that most of us, and even when I was a brahmachari and I had bhaktas and bhaktins under me, I will actually tell them that, not as a way of discouraging or anything like that, but I will tell them most of you will get married, because that's that's how things are. That's what our tendencies should be, dovetail in a certain way, in a certain proper way. And this is by getting married, which in that particular milieu, in that environment and married life, it could be a source of trouble. And we can see that actually some became sannyasis because they were in a bad marriage and they wanted to get out of it and they didn't last. Or it could be a very good basis for one's devotion to solidify. And as in my case, I think I made a very good decision of getting married because it helped my spiritual life. And I admitted unabashedly and openly that my wife is a better devotee than I am. And thanks to her, I'm kind of still a devotee of sorts, of some value, not much. So I think a marriage can become and should become an incentive for encouraging each other to practice Krishna consciousness, to improve our Krishna consciousness. As we heard from both Satchidananda Swami and Chitti Shakti this weekend, that it's not enough. What we have done is not enough. We have to actually improve upon what we have. And this combination that could result in Maitunya Agara, the shackles of sex life, it could become the incentive for liberation, for getting out of the material world, and not necessarily by the via negativa, because the marriage is bad. Okay. If you allow me, let's see. Lila Kishori said, one of my takeaways today, marriage is not a failure. It is another opportunity to serve Krishna. Every situation is a unique opportunity to serve the Lord. Hare Krishna. Nice comment. I'm going to totally digress from what we were talking about for the last couple of minutes. I wanted to read something. I was reading this book, 5 years, 11 months, and a lifetime of unexpected love, from one of our females, mind you, who's an incredibly good writer, Vishaka, from the Yaduvar and Vishaka. She's very candid, and she reveals her doubts and the trouble that she had accepting Krishna consciousness, even after she became initiated, mind you. And she's a great devotee. Matter of fact, she was asked to be the president of the Bhaktivedanta Manor, our very large operation in outside of London. And she's very successfully doing it. And I contacted, I've been pestering her for a year to speak to us, and she finally agreed. And it's going to be in November, of course, because her schedule is very busy. I wanted to read something about music, like because I have a musical ear. God bless me for having a musical ear, which is many times a curse, particularly during some kirtans, and that I am very despotic when it comes to kirtan. Only people who like when someone gives class, if the person is qualified, not because they've been a devotee for a while, but because, is a good speaker, is didactic, can educate others, can convey and summarize messages that are perhaps locked in esoteric language or lofty philosophical ideas. That person should give class, not someone who can repeat the party line. In the same way, people who actually have musical talent should engage it in Krishna's service, and those who don't, they should appreciate it without making any noise. So, because that's not a popular view, apparently, I found a quotation here from Vishaka's book. One afternoon, a stocky, muscular American devotee sat squarely before a microphone in the center of the stage and chanted the Mahamantra while accompanying himself with a plain, pounding drum beat. His voice was more than gruff. It conveyed hardness and ruthless self-assertion. Loudspeakers were everywhere. This was a major program on a pandal. And the volume was up. There was no escape from this disconsolate chant. I hid my irritation at being subjected to it, because after all, God's holy names were being broadcast, and God was none different from his names. That's what Prabhupada had always said. So I hear this a lot, like, oh, but this person is trying to chant God's names. So, what's your right to stop a person like that or to instruct them just because they can't follow a beat? They have no sense of rhythm. They have no musicality. Sri Chaitanya himself had prescribed chanting as the method for attaining God consciousness and assured his followers that there were no hard and fast rules for chanting. I was supposed to appreciate the singing. I was practicing bhakti after all, but I loathed it. So even while resenting this vibrational affront, I retired mentally, determined to say nothing, show nothing, betray nothing, determined to pretend to be a neutral, undisturbed devotee. After all, spiritualists are undisturbed, aren't they? I walked around full of aggravation and annoyance, as well as a barely controllable urge to destroy the blaring sound system. The singing went on, flauntingly, the crass voice with its dire need to be heard infiltrating everywhere without mercy. The afternoon went on. Distraught and baffled, I entered Prabhupada's cottage, sat down, and listened to him speak with Bob Cohen, a young Peace Corps teacher in India. Finally, the singing ended. An unspeakable sweet silence ensued. Leaning back on his bolster, relaxed, not looking at anyone in particular, Prabhupada said, "Good, he has stopped." I was startled, as if from a dead sleep. Had I heard that right? Yes. Exhilaration, catharsis, my cognitive dissonance, my jumble, clashing, only semi-suppressed emotions dissipated like fog in the morning sun. And the few of us sitting on that earthen floor before Prabhupada burst into relieved laughter. By doing it himself, Prabhupada had just given us permission to express our feelings candidly, humanly, and without apology. So I am justified, apparently. I can quote this paragraph. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for your patience, and hopefully you will be able to take something away from this impromptu lecture. And I hope I hear from all of you soon, as all of us have something to share that is encouraging and enlightening to others. Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Granted Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.